What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Bulls Latest. I'm your host, Matt Johnson. We have a very interesting development to get to. This went down yesterday. Chicago Bulls and White Sox owner Jerry Reinsdorf, 89 years old now, has agreed to sell the controlling interest of the White Sox to private equity investor Justin Ishbia. He's the brother of majority owner of the Phoenix Suns, Matt Ishbia. That is a huge development for many reasons here. It's been agreed that this will go down sometime between the time window of 2029 and 2033. So he still has a few years before giving up control of the White Sox, but it's in the near future now. That will happen here somewhere down the line, and that raises the question, and as it pertains to Chicago Bulls, what's his future going to be with this organization? With him finally giving up the White Sox or looking to do that somewhere down the road here in 2029 through 2033, it remains to be seen. Is he going to be around for the Chicago Bulls much longer? I personally think with his son Michael running a lot of the things now with the Bulls, I don't foresee him giving up the Bulls, but I think it's a favorite element of his that he has, and is something that they enjoy doing and have a passion for as a family. So I think it's going to be interesting to follow that as we move closer down the road there to that time window. It's only right to think about that, given that selling the White Sox here, agreeing to part ways with the White Sox starting in possibly 2029 is the first step there to moving on in a lot of ways. So it's interesting, though. He did buy the Bulls back in 1981 for approximately $20 million. It's been valued by CNBC this year that the Bulls are now worth $5.8 billion. So I think, making a sale of the Chicago Bulls, it would pay dividends for him financially. It's skyrocketed in value since he bought the team back in 81. So that's no question. I just think he had it brings him a lot of joy to run the Chicago Bulls. He's said that over the years many times, and yeah, he runs the White Sox, but he's always talked about how he loves the Bulls and has a passion for this team and the fans and this organization. So I find it hard to believe he's going to give up the Bulls. I think it'll be a lot, tougher for him to move on from the Bulls than it was for him to make this decision with the White Sox. So 2029 and 2033, that window is when the controlling interest of the White Sox will change there, more than likely. So we're going to have to track that going down the road here. But that was definitely something to watch there. There's also been the recent contract extension for Billy Donovan that I spoke to previously that was given out at some point between the 2022 and 23 season. So, committing to a coach like that over the next few years, he's already in the midst of that extension. We don't have the financial details or the length of that, but that was certainly a decision that I'm sure Jerry Reinsdorf played a part in. I think he will want to stay around to see that contract fulfill itself, and he wants to see the Bulls get to a promising place there. So, like I said, his son Michael does make a ton of decisions for the Bulls in particular. He's in the news a lot and does seem to have a firm grasp of what the organization's doing. So Jerry Reinsdorf, 89 years old. That's no young age to be running an organization there. A lot of stress that comes with it. So, it's something to keep an eye on. I thought that was a very interesting development there. Obviously, the Bulls and Sox have been very closely related for a long time here in terms of the ownership. So we will certainly see how that plays out going forward. As far as another draft prospect I wanted to dive into, it's a guy I haven't really talked about yet. He's a very intriguing guy coming out of Auburn, but also very questionable. So it's a unique outlook for a guy who had such an awesome senior year in college there and goes to the next level here in pre-draft. He's looked at as a guy who has a lot of questions. I don't know how else to say it, but Janai Broom, a 6'10", 240-pound forward out of Auburn. Won pretty much any national accolade you could think of behind Cooper Flagg. So Cooper Flagg was the guy, obviously going to be the number one pick in this coming draft, generational talent, but Janai Broom was probably the next big name this past year, and it's very interesting how it's transpired that it's believed that a lot of his skills and abilities may not transfer as well as many think to the next level. He did win the Sporting News National Player of the Year in 2024-25, so that was a heck of an achievement from that guy as well. And like I said, finished second to Cooper Flagg in almost every other outlet Player of the Year award. He was an SEC Player of the Year, consensus first team All-American. He led Auburn to a number one overall seed in the tournament, which was, that's says a lot given how stacked the SEC has been in basketball in recent years. I think he was also voted to a member of the All-SEC first team there, where he averaged 18.5 points a game, nearly 11 boards a game. In his senior season this past year, shot 51% from the field. He's a defensive monster, man. He's a shot blocker, a rim deterrent. This guy showed it all in college. So it's predicted, though, and widely believed that he's not going to be a starter to begin his NBA career. So he's going to be taken a bit later. Granted, we've seen a few. It's far more unlikely, but we've seen a lot of these lower draft picks kind of pan out. As of recent, overall, the statistics don't speak loudly to that being a successful place to be drafted. The numbers don't lie there, but I think it's a guy to keep an eye on in terms of how he proceeds through the rest of the pre-draft process, where he gets drafted and by who, and kind of how he develops there. I don't know if he fits what the Bulls are going to take, given where the Bulls are picking. I think there's plenty of centers and forwards that have a lot better, NBA intangibles, so to speak. There's no denying Janai Broom was a monster in college, especially this past season at Auburn. He did it night in, night out, and was the model of consistency there for what Auburn did. He was their guy. So I just think it's an interesting case to look at, profiling all of these pre-draft prospects. This is a guy whose name pops up and you're like, oh, Janai Broom, he's a hell of a player. What's there not to like about the guy? There's been some measurables that have been doubted by these NBA scouts, and in particular, if he can bring that consistency to the next level, I think is the biggest question there. So I wonder how that's going to affect his draft status, and ultimately if it's a guy who's still there, if the Bulls take a look at it. We'll see. The Bulls definitely have a need at that position, and have been working out numerous forwards there. So we'll see if he comes into Chicago for a pre-draft workout. I'll keep you guys up to date on that, most definitely. But something to watch there, definitely. Jumping into a fun topic here is kind of getting into Arturas Karnisovas here and what he could learn from this NBA Finals. It's a great opportunity for a guy who's frankly, not made many Bulls fans very happy since he took over. I think this 2025 NBA Finals is a perfect example of how two teams stuck in the lottery for 3 straight years, from 2021 to 2023, and completed successful rebuilds. They did it by committing to long-term vision and making bold moves. That's the formula for any successful rebuild in any sport, frankly. You got to have a long-term vision. You got to roll the dice sometimes on these big moves. Oklahoma City started it by doing the Paul George and Russell Westbrook trades to the Rockets and Clippers, respectfully there. In return, they did land SGA, which, needless to say, league MVP. He's carried this Thunder team through the NBA playoffs up to this point, and has been a very, very successful piece in that trade. They landed SGA in a haul of 7 first-round picks. 7 first-round picks. If that ain't, that gives you an opportunity to line up the chance to build with young talent there. 7 first-round picks would do anybody justice. Not every draft pick pans out, but giving yourself the opportunity and that volume to do so, I think is a great formula to succeed there. And I think that's something that AK should look at. Building draft capital. The Bulls have a second-round pick this year for the first time in 4 years. I mean, it's crazy. And just to think, in the first round in particular, when's the last time the Bulls hit on a first round pick? It's been some time there. So, Matas Buzelis certainly is a guy that showed a ton of promise this year, and I think he could be the most recent guy that the Bulls did hit on in the first round. And I got my fingers crossed for that guy, and I hope that he continues to develop and what we hope that he is. So I think, as far as haul for those 7 first round picks is the best element to what OKC did there. I think 2 of those 7 picks turned into Jalen Williams and Cason Wallace. I mean, I don't really need to say much on how productive they've been for this Thunder team. They've been otherworldly when it comes to what they've brought. I mean, Cason Wallace cracked the starting lineup last night in Game 1 of the Finals. That's a guy who's produced off the bench all year long, and they are such a deep roster, along with the Indiana Pacers, I'll get to in a second here. But I just think, Jalen Williams, Cason Wallace, 2 guys who have had an awesome impact on that team. And that's just 2 of the 7 picks. So, Chet Holmgren's a guy they took with one of their own selections as well, and that panned out. So that's the formula. I think going after young talent and having a vision and building it from the ground up is something you got to do. And then obviously picking off pieces in free agency to complement that. Isaiah Hartenstein, Alex Caruso, who they got from Chicago here. They picked him right out of Chicago. They traded for him, and he's made a home in Oklahoma City and has thrived there. So much like he did in Chicago. So I think finding that combination of young talent and veteran stars, you can kind of coincide the two when you're building. And I think you got to have a plan, you got to have a direction, something that the Bulls have struggled to do in recent years. So if you're AK, looking at the Thunder, that's something a lot of things you want to take into account there. I mean, as far as the Pacers go, their rebuild was quite significant too. They flipped Domantas Sabonis to the Kings for none other than Tyrese Halliburton here. And look at what Halliburton's done. He's been the most crucial player in this Indiana Pacers run. A huge national spotlight on this guy, constantly hitting big shots. Most recently last night. I mean, this guy's unbelievable how he's developed, and it's no telling that he was not a superstar cornerstone guy in Sacramento initially. So Indiana went and got him in return for Sabonis. Surrounded him with versatile, modern, roster pieces that focused on spacing and defense there. Very simple yet very effective. They went and grabbed Pascal Siakam. They got Aaron Naismith. They traded for Obi Toppin. It's nailing the draft. The Pacers have nailed the draft in recent years, which, hate to say it, but the Bulls haven't done of recent. Patrick Williams has turned out to be a major disappointment. So these guys in Indiana are panning out, and it speaks to Rick Carlisle and that development in that organization and what they're able to do with these guys. Benedict Mathurin, Andrew Nembhard, Ben Shepherd. We've seen a lot of meaningful minutes out of Ben Shepherd. These are young guys that, if you're a casual NBA fan, you're like, who the hell are these guys? But they're fun players to watch. The depth of this Pacers team has been very effective, and I think every single point to which I've spoken to on these 2 teams is something Arturas Karnisovas should frankly take notes on, man. Like go and figure out how you can build something in significance that relates to what both of these teams have done. It works. It's a proven formula. I think as far as what the core of the rebuilds for these 2 teams entailed, it was they built a roster that fit the standards of the modern NBA. I think what the Bulls did in grabbing DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine a couple years ago does not necessarily fit the standards of what the modern game is today. DeMar DeRozan, well, certainly the mid-range master, he's had a hell of an NBA career, but that doesn't speak well to what he's able to do in today's modern game. The modern game comes in playing fast and shooting a lot of threes and having the ability to be explosive. And it's tough to see that in what the Bulls have built in recent years. It frankly hasn't been there. Embracing youth, pace, shooting, versatility, those are all aspects that they should look to continue to provide there if you're building this Bulls team moving forward. Most importantly, I think picking a direction. Sticking to it, and having a vision, very important for what you're going to build towards bringing home an NBA championship. These two teams in the finals right now on the verge of doing so, and they've done that by sticking to their vision. Two of the best front offices in basketball, if you ask me. So I think where AK went wrong, clearly, unlike the Pacers and the Thunder, he has not picked a direction. He's refused to commit to anything, and that's why you've seen so many different philosophies kind of take place here in Chicago over recent years. And I think it'll be fun to see where this team heads moving forward, and they have a lot of moving pieces, a lot of young talent. They're building cap space. They're starting to do it the right way. But, they need to stick to that and have a plan. And there's going to be a lot of big decisions to be made this summer on whether guys are worth the money. I've talked about Josh Giddey. I've talked about Kobe White, Ayo Dosunmu. But I want to see it done through trades and through the draft. And much like these two teams in the NBA Finals have done. I mean, the Thunder and the Pacers, they're the blueprint. They're what the Bulls should be looking for. And I think AK would serve himself well from taking a long, hard look at how these teams have gotten here and, providing that for the Bulls in the future. So I want to thank y'all for joining me today on this episode of Bulls Latest. We got a lot of fun stuff to dive into as the summer rolls along here. The draft only a couple weeks away, so we'll continue to follow these draft workouts and these players that are coming in, as well as keep an eye on that White Sox and Bulls development with Jerry Reinsdorf there and how that is going to affect the Bulls moving forward. We'll continue to take a look at that and any news and notes that pertain to this Bulls team. So, again, I want to thank y'all for joining me. Hit that like and subscribe button, and we will see you guys next time.